until, there was a breaking point for me where I went into work on a Monday morning, and we were having a Monday morning check-in. And I had my first panic attack, definitely had a moment where everything just kind of snapped. That was definitely a really hard time, and I was appreciative. I appreciate how you shared your challenge with me when we met a few weeks ago. So that would be one for me, whereby, I had 6 months or a year where I was feeling like full body anxiety and like quite low at times as well. And, it was almost like, when you get burnt and you're really sensitive in that area. I kind of felt like that for like a year, I was nervous to go into social situations, and usually I absolutely loved them, but it was just, so that was kind of a dragon that I would have slayed definitely a few years ago. And
ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to season 4 of What Makes You Tick. I know it's been a while since season 3 finished, but there's been a lot of things going on in the background, and I'm delighted now to bring you season 4. It's going to be super exciting. We have a lot of really, really exciting guests, and to kick off the season, I am joined with a gentleman from Cork, a lad called Ronan Conway, and Ronan is going to talk to us about the work that he does with people, both in a personal and professional manner. And listen, myself and Ronan had a conversation a couple of weeks back, but we'll get into that. But Ronan, first of all, great to have you on board.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
Yeah, good to have you on board. Usually when I introduce people, I don't say they're from Cork, but I just got ahead of you because when you meet somebody from Cork, how do you know? Because they'll tell you.
I was just about to say it.
No, great to have you on board. Why don't we just get stuck into it? Because people might know who you are, and I found your story really compelling. But maybe let's touch on how our paths crossed and why you reached out.
So firstly, thanks for having me. When we met a few weeks ago for a chat, I felt like there was a lot more juice in the tank in the conversation, so it's great to continue on the chat. A friend of mine actually sent on your podcast to me around a year ago, and it was a conversation that you had with Caelan Doris, and Caelan would have mentioned a session that I had run with the Ireland rugby team. And I've been working as a facilitator for 10 years, and I feel like I've learned a bit about working in different environments, be it sport or corporate or in the prison system. And I said to myself, I'd like to share what I've learned, some of the skills, some of the tools, some of the knowledge that I've learned with people, and hopefully they can pick up bits and pieces along the way.
Brilliant, yeah. Because what I found, I suppose, intriguing about your story is that when you were a young man in your 20s, having qualified in one area, it wasn't ticking your box. It wasn't kind of giving you the fulfillment that you were looking for. And I think there's a bravery in taking stock of where you're at, especially when society is telling you to go down one road because that's what society thinks. Maybe you might touch on that story a little bit, because it might give people a bit of context to how you got into the work of facilitation and working with groups. And I think we can touch on that a little bit later.
Definitely. So I grew up in Bishopstown in Cork, and from an early age, hurling would have been a big part of my life. I was one of those kids running around the local area with a hurley attached to their hand, and target practice off different stop signs and whatnot. So that would have been a big formative part of my life. All the way up until end of school and college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I studied commerce in UCC, and I did a master's in IT and accounting, and still I didn't really know what I wanted to do, But while I was while I was in college in UCC, I was working as a care assistant for people with special needs with a great charity called Cope Foundation. And every summer I'd work in Cope, and I found I was really like fulfilled coming home from work, and I was absolutely buzzing. My eyes were bright, and I was just really fulfilled by my work. So that planted a bit of a seed while I was in college days. So when I finished college, took a few jobs in different areas in business, and whilst they were, really, really great jobs and opportunities, just wasn't making me tick, pardon the pun. Yeah, there was a few years of being really, really lost. And the way I think about it is, I felt like I was on a train going in the wrong direction, and I didn't know how to get off.
I think there's a lot of people on that train at the moment.
Yeah.
And what was the thing that triggered you to stop?
Yeah. So there's a few things, but the main one was, I remember being on a bus in Cork. It was around 11 years ago, and it was a November night, and it was really, really Novembery, dark and wet. And my friend Dermot Link gave me a call, and he said that there's a new organization being set up called the SOAR Foundation. And he said they're doing a recruitment drive, and they're a youth organization, and it's really exciting. And if you want to come up to Dublin and take part in a workshop, come along. So I had been studying psychology in Dublin, so I was getting the bus up and down from Cork every week. And I said, you know what, while I'm actually up in Dublin, I'll just pop along to one of these workshops. I had no idea what a workshop was, by the way. I thought a workshop was something to do with carpentry. That was my image of a workshop. So it was in Temple Bar, and there was 25 people there, 25 complete strangers. And there was Tony Griffin and Carl Swan, the two founders of the SOAR Foundation. And essentially what they did was they ran a 2-hour conversation. So it was a 2-hour experience for all of us, delving into, genuinely, I can't remember what we spoke about, but I know it was something to do with life, but it was the way it was facilitated, and the way I felt when I left, that just completely blew me away. And I've never had that feeling so strong in my life that a certain event actually changed the course of my life, but that really did, and I'd always said that I wanted to work with people, and I wanted to, impact people. And when I left that session, I said, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to learn how to facilitate. So SOAR was like just getting off the ground itself. So, don't think we had an office actually at the time, and but it was very much in the formative stage. So I was still traveling up and down to Dublin, but I said, this is what I want to do. And there was 8 years spent there, but I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, well, so let me just touch on that. So the fact that it was a group, was it a group of potential facilitators? Is it a group of people like you who could potentially be part of SOAR that were brought in, and Tony and Carl brought you through what they will do or how they would look after a group? Like maybe just touch on that, because people might necessarily, while it's a youth foundation, right? Am I right saying that?
Yeah, it's a youth organization. Yeah.
Youth organization. So, but what does it do for young people?
Yeah. So what SOAR does is it runs self-esteem resilience workshops for teenagers. So what that means is we travel around the country to different schools, and we go into mainly transition year students, so year groups. So that might be between 20 people, or it might be 120 people. And what SOAR does is they create a space for young people to really just press pause on life as a teenager and explore some topics that might be relevant to them. So like what influences teenagers? What are some of the influences from the outside that influence us? What are some of the challenges that can be faced as a teenager, both internally and externally? How do you navigate adversity? What are the different resources available to us, both within school and outside of school? And also creating a compelling vision for the type of person that they want to be, so that's essentially what it is.
I'll tell you one thing, I would have loved to have had something like SOAR when I was a kid or when I was a teenager. Because it's for me, it's challenging at the best of times, life in general, right? And it can be really, really cool when you get to a point where you've got a grip in life. And I don't think anybody gets a full grip in life, but when you're fairly confident or comfortable in your own shoes, like I'm nearly 40 now, and it's only in the last couple of years that I've started to kind of edit the negativity out of my life and focus on all the kind of the good things and the people who want my time and want to kind of get to know me or hang out with me, you know, and me them. And I think when you do that, you see an ultimate rise in your stock, personal stock, you know, and in terms of your own net worth or your feelings. But when you're a teenager, like there's so many things. Like when I was growing up, you got bullied or you were in the yard and that was it. Whereas now you're growing up and there's no sanctuary because you get home and you can still get bullied or attacked online, or you've got all the societal pressure from all the technology that you're dealing with. So I'll tell you one thing, to have something like that and have somebody like you helping teenagers probably articulate what their thoughts are.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll say that like there's an amazing crew in SOAR, and you know, it's not just me, it's like there's been some amazing facilitators and there still are, and all the way up through the office staff, you know. So yeah, I'm really delighted for the young people of Ireland that the likes of SOAR exist, you know, because essentially the way I think about it is, you know, teenagers are the lead character of their own story, you know what I mean? So like any movie or book, you know, they are the lead character of their own story. And like within that story, when they get to teenage years, as we'll all agree, you know, it can be confusing, it can be stressful, it can be challenging. Yeah. Because you're not a kid and you're not an adult. So it's an in-between stage. So really it's just offering them a space to have a real authentic chat about that. And like, you know, for me in school, I was the same with you. It was an abyss of slagging and, you know, taking the piss, and like that's okay, and you know, that's part of being a teenager, but there's definitely more real stuff underneath the surface once you create the right conditions.
Yeah, geez, yeah. What did they say? You're a product of your environment, right? So if you can have that kind of environment when you're young, Jesus, imagine what could happen in the future. 100%. So that SOAR was the kind of the point where you realized, right, I'm making a change. So at that stage when you went into SOAR, you were working in a kind of like the corporate world, right?
Yeah, I was.
And so what happened after that session with Tony and Carl? Like, what did you just basically say? Here, listen, I'm done. I'm out of here, or did you transition, or what way did it work?
Yeah, there was a few things that led me to actually finish. Like, I actually won a competition for an audition to be on a commercial while I was working in the job, and they sent me away to America for a week to LA, and I ended up staying 3 months.
As you do.
That's how I actually finished the job. I said, you know what, maybe this is a sign. So I remember being over in San Diego just before I was about to fly back, and I said, I was looking over this really idyllic, you know,
view
scene.
And everything.
The sun was going down. It was like very Californian. I remember people were clapping for the sunset and all that, and it was lovely. But like within me, there was still like I remember looking at it thinking, this is perfect. But within me, I felt like there was a certain hollowness. You know, there was an unfulfilled need, and that was definitely propelled me towards committing to SOAR and saying, you know, let's put all our eggs in the basket. But look, it's the road less traveled by in some ways when you're quitting a secure job. But
it takes balls, though. I tell you, it takes bravery to do stuff like that, because as I said at the start, when you're in the world of the societal success mode, where you're in a job, pensionable job, and just go through the kind of the steps that would be deemed to be successful, ultimately success, they never think about happiness. And like, if you're not happy, then there's like, success is a million miles away. So it's like finding what you're happy at. And as you said at the start, helping people seems to be that area that you seem to love. So SOAR was that foundation that gave you that nearly that, and in saying it's an 8-year foundation. So like, it wasn't a case that you just dipped in and then tried to do something else. Like, you solidified yourself as part of the DNA of SOAR, because SOAR 10 years this year, right? So like, you're there 8 years, or you were there 8 years. So you got some brilliant tools. Then what happened? So how did you then make the progression from working with SOAR to then creating your own business and your own kind of identity?
Yeah. So at the tail end of working for SOAR, I started dipping my toe into working with teams. So as I said, I had experience playing hurling, and I'd often wondered what it would be like to bring this style of workshop experience to a team. Because most times when I finished a workshop with teenagers, not only did they get something personally, but they got something collectively. So they would have felt unified, and there would have been a real sense of togetherness.
Yeah.
And I used to think, imagine if you brought this to sports teams, what would that actually look like? So Kevin McMillan, who was working in SOAR at the time as well, gave me a shout, and he said, I'm very tempted to do an impression of him, but I won't.
Go on. We'll get the audio sound and we'll send it on to him.
I'll spare him for this one. But he said, would you come in and do a session for the Dublin under-20s? Because he was working with them at the time. And so we developed what we call a run sheet, which is basically your script for the session. So we developed a run sheet that would help them to build a deeper connection to their teammates. So, we worked a few times at the Dublin 20s, and that was excellent. And then
give me an example of a run sheet. So give us an example of something that you'd put them through.
The run sheet design is really based on the information that I'm given from the backroom team and the management. So I try to understand where the team is at and where they're trying to get to. I also try to get a grasp on the different dynamics that might be in play in the team, and also some of the key individuals that might be worth understanding before I step into the workshop. From there, I will design and map out various exercises that will help me achieve that aim. The exercises might take shape like people going away doing some journaling or reflection for themselves, and then bringing it back to the bigger group for a wider discussion, or also smaller group little pod discussions. It also might include some visualizations and whatnot. The subjects that we discuss are a mixture between personal and also sports related. So a few examples of them might be understanding the life path of each individual and how they've come to being in this room today. What are some of the ways in which they've been resilient both on and off the pitch? What the jersey really means to them, connecting to the legacy of the team. So like understanding that they are the current link in the chain of this whole team's legacy. And finally, just giving them a space to tap into what it really means to be playing for the team. So how does the vision stimulate them? How does the vision motivate them? And hearing from everyone's opinions as to why they show up every week can be quite powerful. Sometimes when I go into sports teams and I'll ask them, what do you usually talk about? Okay, day to day when you're in the dressing room with the girls or the lads, what do you usually talk about? What do you think they say?
Love Island.
Love Island. It actually did come up last week. I swear.
Yeah. What would they talk about? I'd say, is it the night before, the weekend before, or something they did together?
Yeah, exactly. Anything else? Do you think? I know I'm facilitating here now, but
anything else? Jeez. I don't know. Would they be talking about their partners or their girlfriends? People that are close to them. Like their job, maybe.
Job, relationship, the next game coming up, injuries.
Yeah.
So then sometimes when I ask them what they usually, or what would they never speak about, sometimes they'll outline, they'll say maybe fears, my motivations, what drives me, my family, what football, rugby, hurling really means to me deep down, So what I invite teams to do is I say, look, is it going to help our performance to talk about nights out, Love Island and whatnot? Not really.
Yeah.
But if we can dip the waterline down, so if you picture an iceberg, if we can dip the waterline down a little bit, and be generous with who we are underneath it all, that's where we can really create some value for the team, but also for you as an individual. So, we might cover topics like, what has led us to this room today. So like, who or what has led us on our path to today? You might speak about, what are the motivations? Who are you playing for? What are you playing for? Where are you playing for? You might speak about, the vision of the team. It's like every team has a vision every year, and they're going up a mountain together and they're striving towards their peak, So like, what is the vision and how can they emotionally attach to that vision to get to where they want to, because I know you probably know this from playing rugby yourself, but, you need players to buy in. You need players to really be, have a deep respect for people, for each other. You need to be bought into what the shared purpose is. And, that creates a serious energy when all of those boxes are ticked,
Yeah, big time. I actually used to do a thing when I was coaching. You might say it's right or wrong, but when I was coaching, I'd always ask kind of who are the closest two players to you, like which ones in the pitch are the most important to you, and then ask the guys then, okay, well, tell me something about those guys. Like, how many sisters have they got, or brothers have they got, or what job do they do? And if they couldn't answer some of the questions, then my point would be, well, you don't necessarily know them enough. So if you don't really know them enough, are you going to fight for them when the chips are down, when we're in the trenches, And
Exactly.
then when you get one or two guys doing that, each person doing that to one or two guys, all of a sudden you have a collective knowledge of each other. And it means like you shout loudest for the person you know than the person you don't, right? So you do more for the person you know than the person you don't.
Exactly. And like, especially when if you're working with a county team or an international side, for example, all of these people are coming from different towns, different counties, and their opportunities to really to get to know each other can be quite limited sometimes, because you might be focusing on strategy, tactics, analysis. You might be training your body, you might be training your mind, so these sessions are like a gym with a difference, but you're actually building like both individual resilience, but you're also building the collective resilience,
Yeah.
So it's
I remember when I was talking to Caelan, and he spoke about at the beginning when Andy Farrell's whole team came together, and he spoke very emotionally about you coming into the room and posing the question to them all about if they could see them, if they could imagine themselves as their 8-year-old self, and they could see themselves now, what would they say, or along those lines, or how would they be proud of themselves, and again, the privilege to be playing at such a high level, whether it's for Ireland or Dublin, or you're playing at that elite level in GA or hurling or football, whatever it is, that remember when you were a kid what you always wanted to be. And now you're getting the opportunity to live that. I just thought it was super, super strong. Like, where did that come from? Like, how did you develop that as a kind of like a way of thinking?
Yeah. So again, I really credit a lot of what I've learned to SOAR, like I would have learned a lot of different methodologies for achieving your aims in a workshop. And sometimes it's a visualization like Caelan was at experience, but also, it might be conversation, it might be various other elements. So, for that one, sports at a high level can be incredibly intense sometimes, and it can be high pressure environment, and the next challenge is only around the corner constantly, so sometimes it just needs a bit of perspective as to what they're doing. So, and for me, the greatest perspective sometimes can come from, and is the most purest when it comes from, the little part of yourself inside of you, the player that, put on an extra large jersey and carried a rugby ball and, for pure fun, and that's why you kicked off your career. And like, to just tap back into that, get a bit of perspective and appreciation for the journey that you're on, that can be incredibly powerful for people.
Because you played at elite level hurling as well, right? And you did well on the hurling front. Now, did you have anything like that when you were playing?
Not that I can remember. No,
yeah.
Can remember.
So
I can remember a club team in Cork who I heard were having quite meaningful conversations in their dressing room after training. And I can remember just not understanding what that was about or why they were doing it, or, but yeah, it wasn't a thing, but I knew that it was somewhere out there. But
So here's the thing then. So I can imagine it in an elite environment where you're all kind of striving towards one goal, right? But you said you work on the corporate front as well. So how does that translate then? Because for elite athletes, and I've seen it, we're working with Sport Ireland and a number of different athletes and organizations, that the athlete, when it comes to transitioning into the corporate world, right, a lot of the time the narrative they have is they don't have the experience. Whereas I completely think that you can gain the experience, but what you can't gain is that work ethic, that high level of constant performance, and the determination to train and to be in a really, really kind of difficult environment in terms of pushing yourself so much that you can't necessarily bring that into the corporate world. So I feel that elite athletes are far stronger positioned to transition into the corporate world than they believe themselves. But when it comes to corporates, and when it comes to that kind of way of team building and driving high performance within teams, or most notably high performance within individuals, how do you, like, are the fundamentals the same is what I'm asking, or how does it translate?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of overlap between the fundamentals when it comes to sports and corporate, and how I deal with them. Whether you're in either environment, there is a need for collaboration and there's a need for engagement. And how you really create that is by helping people feel psychologically safe in their workplace. So what is psychological safety? Psychological safety is the belief that somebody has that they can contribute freely as they are. An example would be putting your hand up when you're in a meeting, or making suggestion, or offering feedback, or if you have a new idea for a project, being okay with sharing that without the fear of judgment or repercussion. So a lot of the content within the programs that I run with workplaces are helping people to build their levels of psychological safety. So essentially what that is, building the trust between the person and their teammates. And that can be done over the course of 1 hour and 2 hours over the course of the program that I run. McKinsey did a report last year, and they said that organizations that want to foster a sense of psychological safety should deliver trainings that are sensory, emotional, and create aha moments. So I aim to tick some of those boxes over the course of the program, and in many ways it's similar to the sports program, but in many ways it's quite different because the language is different, the context is different, the demographic is different, and it's just about putting on that lens to match the context that you're entering into.
And an area I'd be interested in understanding, Ronan, is that you've done so much work with so many people and driving the kind of the high performance and getting the best out of them. What do you do personally to get the best out of yourself? Because I have noticed in life that a lot of people could come and ask you for advice, right? And we're great at giving advice, but sometimes we're not so good at actually following our own advice. And I spoke to you before about a challenge that I had a number of years ago, and I was great at kind of thinking or sharing, telling others how to do things, but not taking the advice on board myself. And it basically created a hell of a lot of sadness for a long period of time. But it was only until I kind of like had a eureka moment that I was like, right, okay, I'm making a change. It opened up my world and my whole perspective, and it created gave me the opportunity to be happy again, Yeah. So what do you do to look after Ronan?
Yeah. So yeah, like I think sometimes, well, personally, you need to learn the hard way sometimes. So like a few years ago, I'd say around 5 years ago, I was burning candle at both ends with work and social life, and you know, had some relationship stresses as well, and I felt like, there was a lot of anxiety rumbling within me, but I wasn't giving it much attention, until there was a breaking point for me where I went into work on a Monday morning, and we were having a Monday morning check-in, and I had my first panic attack. Definitely had a moment where everything just kind of snapped, and that was definitely a really hard time, and I was appreciative. I appreciate how you shared your challenge with me when we met a few weeks ago. So that would be one for me, whereby, I had 6 months or a year where I was feeling like full body anxiety and like quite low at times as well. And, it's almost like, when you get burnt and you're really sensitive in that area. I kind of felt like that for like a year. I was nervous to go into social situations, and usually I absolutely love them, but it was just, so that was kind of a dragon that I would have slayed definitely a few years ago. But the reason I kind of give that preamble is, I can remember a friend said to me, when I was chatting to him about it, at the time, he said, "Isn't this a great opportunity for you to go deeper and learn about yourself?" And there was definitely some layers that I hadn't gone and investigated. So to answer your question, that was a catalyst to really start looking after myself a bit better.
I was the same. I was the same. My sister actually said to me, she said, "Steve, you surround yourself with really strong people in certain parts of your life, and maybe you need to look at yourself and need to actually delve a little bit deeper, like what you said." And so I went out and I went through a whole kind of process of therapy, and the way I kind of saw it was that if you're training in the gym and you're going through a process to get bigger or to get leaner, you go through that process, whether it takes 6, 12 weeks or 6 months or whatever it is. And the same thing should be applied to with your mind, because it doesn't just fix overnight. Now, some people just need 2 or 3 sessions and they're good to go. Whereas I kind of just said, right, let's go through the process and let's uncover a few things here.
And sorry to cut across you, but like, just to add to that, like therapy has been huge for me. Like, it's been, we all, from our upbringings and life in general, we have certain beliefs about ourselves and the world, and like, what an amazing amenity to have, if you can afford it, like to actually just do a little NCT on yourself.
Well, I was massively, well, not so massively against it, but I didn't really believe in it until I needed it. And then when I did it, I've become a massive advocate of it, because I'm kind of, there's an element of proof in the pudding. Now there's still things I don't get right, and that's fine, but you're not looking for the kind of the perfect life or the perfect solution. It's about being content and happy in yourself, because therefore, if you are in yourself, then you can attract others, whether it's relationship or friendships and so on. And it makes it far fuller, and you're more kind of real, and you don't suffer the bullshit, and it's great to be in that kind of mindset.
So I was telling you a few weeks ago that I'm doing a bit of work in prison at the moment.
Talk to me about that.
I did a session a couple of weeks ago, and the lads are, they're great lads, unbelievably fond of them, but like, one of them landed a lovely nugget of wisdom a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, and I can completely relate to this, he was saying, like, for so long he was living outside of himself, so he was gauging his value and his worth from relationships and impressing people, and maybe being the tough guy as well, his reputation. So it was actually only when he started serving time that he realized maybe the best way to look after yourself is to actually look within, and not feel like you need to be fueled by what's around you and your environment. So I just wanted to share that one.
I think that's brilliant. How did you get involved in the prison, in working with the prisons? So when you say in the prison, like, you were in the prison, are you sitting down like what we would see in Shawshank, and sit down and actually sit and talk to the guys and help them kind of figure things out?
Yeah, so I worked with the Dublin footballer for 3 years, and after one of the workshops in 2020, Philly McMahon approached me and he told me that he was working with the lads in the progression unit in Mountjoy Prison, and he asked me would I come in and run a similar workshop or similar program that I ran with the Dubs. And I said yes straight away. I was really excited, and then unfortunately COVID hit. So when COVID hit, I decided to go back and prepare myself for Mountjoy, and I started studying the work of Dr. Gabor Mate. And for those of the listeners who don't know Gabor Mate, he is a doctor / physician, and he specializes in trauma, child development, addiction, and recovery. So to give a bit of context around the cohort within the prison, the majority of men entering the prison system have experienced some form of trauma in childhood or throughout their lives. This might lead them down a path of substance use and abuse, and also into life of crime. So Gabor Mate says that recovery is recovering who you are. So it's recovering all of the parts of yourself that you've maybe left behind over the course of a challenging life. So the program that I run with the lads, along with Philly McMahon, is basically a space for the lads to come together and have a shared experience once a week. And we might explore some of their life paths that have led them to where they are right now. Build some acceptance and forgiveness for themselves. Explore some of the adverse childhood experiences that they might have experienced. Reconnect with some healthy values. Write a new script for the type of man that they want to be. And essentially over the course of the 14 weeks that we've been there now, it's been heartening, and it's been challenging, and it's been a big learning curve. But I know I'm speaking about a number of different areas here, be it in schools or sport or corporate or prison. But the one thing that I would like to share with people, whether you're listening to this and you're a manager or you're a teacher or you're a mentor or you're a sports coach, we can all create environments for our groups that learning and growth and development can occur. And I'd just like to share with people some of those ways that I've found impactful. The first one would be creating an environment where everyone feels like they belong. So whether you are the CEO, or you are the cleaner, or you are the centre back, or you're the substitute, or the waterman, it's important to create an environment where every single person that walks through your doors or walks onto the field feels like they belong. And you can do that through simple things like eye contact, using people's names, expressing the value that people bring to the environment. We'll all relate to that in some way where we walked into an environment and we do feel like we are seen and heard. So belonging is number one. And number two would be Amy Edmondson is a lady who wrote a book called Fearless Organizations, and she speaks about how to create a safe environment where people feel like they belong. And how she says to do this is to encourage people and welcome interpersonal risks. So that is as I was saying a while ago, putting your hand up, making suggestions, making recommendations, giving feedback, offering ideas. So it's just really encouraging and welcoming these elements. And when they do come into the group, being open to them and non-judgmental. And finally, what I would say to a lot of managers out there is we all like to present and teach at times. However, putting on the facilitation hat can be really helpful in many ways. So what I mean by that is there is an ocean of wisdom and knowledge in every single room. And in order to unlock that and to tap into that, we can use questions to do this. So really getting curious about who's in the room and what's in the room and who the subject matter experts are in the room, and just getting curious and telling people that you don't have all the answers and that you really need everybody's assistance to get to where you're trying to get to. So firstly, belonging. Secondly, interpersonal risks, and thirdly, putting on the facilitation hat, as well as the teaching and presenting hat. So I hope some people can find some little nuggets in there.
Like I think with the fact that you found a way to help people must be helping you as well. Like it must be, because when you feel that you've connected with somebody, or you've helped them realize something, it must be a super feeling. Or do you just kind of, like the way sometimes doctors or patients or physios and stuff, they just kind of get, that's part of the process? Like, do you still get a kick out of it when you see somebody kind of finding their way?
100% I do. Yeah. And like, as much as I've been at this for 10 years now, but I feel like there's a big journey ahead for me as well. There's a lot for me to learn. But yeah, no, definitely, like, even, recent sessions they definitely leave a mark on you. And, you'll leave, be it a prison or a dressing room or a boardroom, and, you'll be feeling, nice, driving home.
Yeah.
But like, that said, there's a flip side to that. It can be quite tiring, and that's, really there's a need to really, really deliberately look after yourself and your energy with this kind of work as well.
Yeah, my girlfriend's involved in HR and finds it challenging as well sometimes, when it comes to hearing conversations and trying to separate the kind of the work life and the personal life. But it's impossible to do it all the time. Yeah, there's some days are good and some days not so good. But when you're working with the guys in prison, like, in my mind, I find it challenging to get over, because these guys have committed crimes, and these guys are in a world where they're being punished, but they do need somebody like you to help them, right? So was there ever a point in time where you had to kind of separate the crime versus the person and the work you're doing, or is that what you have to do all the
time? So there's a great interview with John Lonergan, who's the ex-governor of Mountjoy, and he was asked a similar question, and what he said was judgment should stop once people are judged by the judicial system. And that's something I'd subscribe to as well. And, as long as people are there and they're willing to grow and develop, like, that's enough for me. And, like, I see everything with a blank canvas, And the thing about it is, some people have had a really desperate start to life, and they've found their own way to survive in the world. Maybe that's drugs or crime, so just to have a bit of understanding about people's paths as well is vital.
So when it came to working with guys in prison, you mentioned there that compassion, I think, is probably the point that I think comes across strongest there, is that we're not all painted with the same brush. We're very much coming from a different world. Some people have had it tougher than others. So the fact that you're able to separate the crime from the person, you can then treat people then with a bit more understanding and a bit more compassion. I think it's only when you really understand the stories and how people have grown and not had similar opportunities to ourselves that you can really kind of believe, Jesus, if a little bit of help now, these guys could go a long way,
100%. Like,
if you were, so your work with prison is fascinating, and I really excited to see how that goes. If I could ask you a question, all right, then it's a bit trickier, because it's more about what you think people think of you, right? And I ask everybody this in various ways, but if you could ask your closest friend to describe you, what do you think they would say?
What do I think they'd say, or what would I like them to say?
Well, either. Like, what would you like? Is there a difference?
Yeah, that's a good point. Deep question. Yeah, so I would hope they'd say that I care. I'd hope that they say that I can be my full self, you know, be it joyful, tears, you know, being low, being hopeful, being playful, you know, all of these parts of myself. I'd hope that I can be my full self, you know, and in turn, hopefully allowing them to do the same. And if I'm throwing in a bonus one, you know, life is precious, you know, and that's one thing I've learned from working with, having these conversations with different groups, is that like life is really precious. That's what it reminds me. And you know, I'd hope that they'd see someone who is alive to life and, you know, appreciates the small moments, the big moments, singing, dancing, you know, watching someone walk an old person across the street. You know, all of these moments can be quite beautiful if we're present enough to notice them. So yeah, that would be it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, like, listen, you and I have met already, but like the conversations that we have, for me, it's all about learning, and it's about growing, and it's about understanding. And as I've said to you before, this whole pod and this whole project is a passion project for me, and it's personal, because it's like I love talking to humans who have different perspectives, who've come from different walks of life, and who've come from and found a niche for themselves that makes them happy. It doesn't need to be the newest or the most vibrant thing in the world. It's about something that they can get up in the morning and kind of look forward to. And I can hear it from you as you talk and as you tell your stories. Like, there's without doubt, there's passion, but there's empathy, and then there's an interest in learning and understanding people and where they've come from, because, as you said, nobody has the same life upbringing and life story. If to talk to your ambition and like your purpose, it kind of feels like your purpose for me is to help people. Would I be right in saying that? Like, if you were to put it on a billboard and you're driving past that billboard, what would that be? What would that sentence be?
So I'll rewind back to like 11 years ago. I remember when I was working in my old job, I was probably lounging around the house, living at home with my parents, and, you know, probably sleeping until an ungodly hour after playing poker the night before with my buddies. And I remember one morning my dad came into me and he said, so what do you want to do? And I was like, you know, I just said, I want to work in a room with people making a positive impact. And he was like, okay, and what job is that? And I was like, I have no idea. But since then I've discovered, you know, the craft of facilitation, and it's probably a bit more refined now. So if I was to say what the billboard would say, it would be, my purpose is to create transformative experiences whereby authenticity, belonging, and potential can flourish.
Jesus, that's something else now. That's a good one to start now. You've set the bar now for everybody else when they come on to the pod.
Competition.
I love it though. I love it. I love that. I love that. Like you know straight away. You knew 11 years ago what you wanted to do. You just needed to find a way to an avenue for you to do that. And it's great that the guys in SOAR have set up what they have done to give you that kind of learning and that experience. And now it's great to see you bring that into other avenues of life, into the corporate world, into prisons, into teams, the elite environment. Like, you've worked with the best of the best. So I listen, take the floor. This is your moment. What would you like to tell everybody? How can they find you? Where can they find you? And if they wanted to get in touch, how would they do so?
They could send me a letter to my house if they want. It'd be lovely to wake up to a letter.
I'll put the address in the show notes.
The main place they can find me is my website, which is ronanconway.ie, which is designed by my good friend Dermot Sexton. Fantastic craftsmanship on his side. You can send me an email. You can get me on LinkedIn as well, and I'll be happy to chat about what people's unique needs are and how I can help.
Yeah, lovely. And listen, like, you've got a friend in me anyway, Ronan, and I think, like, I look forward to our further conversations, and no doubt it'll be over a pint or two. The next one, we won't be rushing off. But yeah, thanks a million for coming on the pod and being part of season 4 with me. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the business flourishes and equally seeing how you flourish, because you're a terrific fella. So fair play to you.
Yeah, it's mutual, and fair play to you on creating this for yourself as well. You know, it's admirable. So thanks for having me on for my first podcast.
Not going to be the last, no doubt. Thanks, big man.
Cheers, Tim.